All right. So one of my friends told me about this term twin flames. It's sort of a variation on what people used to call soulmates, but it is also not necessarily as positive as a soulmate as there can be some idea of a soul plan and things I'll talk about in just a second. And Valentine's Day is coming up, and I've talked about this in the past, but there's some new information I wanted to share about this. Now, first of all, in terms of romantic love, all of us have absorbed a major teaching. Our major teaching about romantic love comes from TV shows and movies. And I've talked about this in the past because every story that you hear, your stories, whether it be your family stories, your parents' story, your grandparents' stories, ancestors' stories, or the story of your country and your history, these are the things that make up your internal world, your religious stories, your spiritual stories. This is your programming, like a computer has program. This is your software. Of course, there's also things carried over from past lives. When you're a child and you look at the world around you and you see how your parents behave and the people in your life, your relatives, and then you go to school, and then, of course, TV and video games, this is where you're learning to behave as a human being. These people are modeling for you. They're modeling behaviors and the stories that you hear and see. And they form deep impressions inside you. And that is where you get your idea about life. And in terms of romantic love, all the romantic parts of any movie, there's romance in Star Wars, for example. Then there's all these chick flicks, and then these things on TV shows, and all this teenage drama and reality TV. And this is the way that people understand romantic love to be. And all of us need to throw out this idea of happily ever after and these fairy tale romances because they don't really exist in the real world in any way, shape, or form. Not even a variation of this. Because the people in Hollywood and the people that write these types of books, very few of them have any inkling about romantic love. They have failed relationships. I mean, think about all the celebrities and the people with money and Hollywood producers and that decadent culture. How many healthy, successful marriages are coming out of that, and politicians, all these people that are, into deviant sexual behaviors and open marriages and all these types of things, have multiple divorces and just have very little energy. Most of their energy goes into being a celebrity, into their work, into the celebrity culture, into their fans being worshipped, these things. And they don't put very much energy into their relationships with their significant others. Most of them are very narcissistic, so they want to be fed. They want somebody around them that's telling them how great they are. And of course, they have these contrived celebrity couples, these fake staged marriages that are put together for publicity and to cement their world in the Hollywood culture, celebrity culture. See, when you think of all that, when you watch these movies, they're totally unrealistic. This aspect where this is pretty much the typical romantic movie or how romance is handled in movies and TV. Pretty much 90% of them are based in the initial stage of the romance. So once this relationship has more or less been consummated, there's some sort of conflict between the couple. There's some kind of reason that's keeping them apart. And so the majority of the movie takes place with them getting together. And once they are together, there's this implied attitude that they live happily ever after. I mean, it's like hilarious if you think about it. And so there's none of the real conflict and none of the real trauma and difficulties that the couple is going to have to go through in most places in the world, because most people in the world, over half the people in the world, live in unbelievable poverty. And that is just a huge factor in their lives. They're not getting the proper nutrition. They can't feed their kids properly. They're often exposed to toxic materials and difficulties, health issues, and they work extraordinarily hard for basically nothing. And marital relationships in that situation are under constant strain. But then there's all the everyday stress and the fact that we have basically zero training in terms of when did you get trained to be in a good romantic relationship? When were you trained to be a good husband or a good wife? Did your parents have a good marriage? Did they show you how to be a good husband and wife, and then in society or school and all these types of things? I've covered this in other videos. So you get basically very little training, and then you have unrealistic pie in the sky expectations based in how romance is presented on TV and in the movies, and where both people are extraordinarily good looking and often successful, and they have a lot of resources, and they're really giving in nature. Once they get peel across their difficulties in getting together, they're really about helping and supporting the other person in unrealistic ways. And so people think, all right, I'm going to get something. Once you get this thing, this marital thing, it's going to be great. You're going to be in a situation where you're loved and cared for. You have a partner to go through life. Life will be a lot easier. You have these kids, and it'll be this sort of joyous activity. And so there's basically no realistic preparation for what's waiting for you. In reality, most people are beat down by life. They have low self-esteem. They have been sort of, come from bad families. They were often used as batteries by their parents. A lot of their energy was drained from them. They went through a difficult schooling system and were maybe not very successful. I'm talking about the majority of people here. So most people have been sort of disappointed by life, maybe feel like a failure, have negative feelings about oneself, and then have no positive energy, and maybe have never really felt loved and don't really know how to share and give love with other people or receive love themselves. See, this is an issue. There are a lot of people who can receive love or receive energy, but they can't give love. Then there's a lot of people who can give love, but they feel bad about themselves and they don't think they deserve love, so they can't receive love. And then there are people who can't receive or give love. And so you have very few people who can give and receive love. And to find two people like this that can match with each other, it's an extraordinarily small window. And I've talked about this before. When people don't have a vertical relationship with God and receive God's love, they have a limited amount of love in which they can give. And usually that gets depleted in a horizontal relationship where the couple is vertically connected to God and they have the support of a loving family, respected elders around them who can sort of guide them and help them through the difficulties, because it's very hard to raise kids and do everything on your own. Now, of course, we have this beast of a system, this huge system that helps us, so we no longer need the village, we no longer need a community so much, and yet that isn't a really good substitute for loving elders that are connected to you both biologically but also on a soul level. But the basic flaw in all of this is that most people don't really understand, we're not trained to understand the benefits of the difficulties and struggles that are there within a marriage. And this also goes with child rearing. So the ability to sacrifice, having the opportunity and the gift to be able to sacrifice for your spouse and sacrifice for your children and give in a loving way, in a godly way, the way that God gives to everyone, and just allow love to flow. Don't think about yourself and just be service oriented. And this type of attitude doesn't exist now because we've all been trained to be takers and what's in it for me. And then we see these movies where there's just things within the relationship, perks and benefits that are in these artificial Hollywood relationships that don't really exist for most people. And so without any material success, being beaten down by life, hating one's job, being drained, struggling with kids, being disconnected because of the internet and all the things that are going on, having no real training, and then having unrealistic expectations about a have happily ever after type scenario that doesn't exist for most people. There's just a total lack of understanding what a relationship's about, how to be successful in a relationship. And part of this is because there has to be a determination within yourself as a human being in terms of your personal goals on planet Earth. Do you want to eat away your spiritual capital, your soul's capital, your spiritual love and your connection to God to secure a great material life? And that is the idea of sort of selling your soul so that you can have a great material life? Or do you want to use your material life and sacrifice and go through struggles and difficulties and live the right way? It's very difficult to live the right way with ethics and morals and be an honest person and be sincere and be open-hearted and be loving and not take a beating because the world is just a brutal place right now. So do you want to use up your material life to make your soul jump ahead farther on your spiritual path? So that's a determination that needs to be taken into consideration before you get into any sort of romantic relationship. Because if you are on a spiritual path, then your romantic relationship, your relationship with your spouse and raising your children, is going to be about refining your soul, getting you closer to God, and you're going to take sort of a severe beating in your material life in different ways, and there's going to be some suffering, but on a spiritual level, you'll advance in leaps and bounds, and you'll become a more loving person, and it'll bring you closer to God. And so that's a far cry away from what we know in terms of these romantic relationships you see playing out that are just sort of pie-in-the-sky daydreams that have no real conflict and no real difficulties and really can't exist in the material world the way it is today. And so when you pursue your spiritual life, when you're in the material, as a material being on planet Earth, when you're incarnate as a human being, you're going to have difficulties. So if you have a great marriage, well, then you'll have money struggles or you'll have difficulty with your kids. But if you have a great family, then what else? There's going to be health issues, cancer perhaps. Everybody gets something. It's just the way it is on planet Earth. Suffering is a part of life on planet Earth. This was never meant to be a utopia. It certainly could be better than the way it is now. But life on planet Earth has always had issues and problems and things to overcome. And all of us have our life issues. People have things they have to deal with anger, with fear, with different kinds of trust issues. Everybody comes in with something, and we have to work through those things. And our marital relationships and raising our children and our families gives us an opportunity, addictions and these types of things, to succeed and triumph over issues that are weaknesses in our character and in our persona as a human being, in our ego, purifying our ego and making us a more pure, better version of ourselves, a more pure reflection of our souls. So I went through my collapse of my marriage over the last, I was married for 18 years, and specifically in the last 2 years, and then right last year was when it became obvious to me at this time that my marriage was over. And there was a lot of difficulties in it, and I wouldn't want to do this over again. But when I came out of this, and it wasn't just about my marriage, but it was also about other things I was going through that seemed completely unfair, my meditations got better, my connection to God got better, and I got better as a human being, became more loving, became a better father, just a better person in general. And I realized even with all these difficulties that there was benefit for me, even though it didn't end the way I wanted it to, or it didn't become the kind of marriage I would have dreamt of and thought was. And it was really kind of a nightmare. So this is something I wanted to cover in terms of you got to understand what movie you're in. Are you in terms of your relationship or your job? What kind of movie are you in? Are you the hero in your own movie that you're living your life? Are you in a romantic comedy? Are you in a horror movie? Is it a black comedy and a dark comedy that's going to end badly? Is it, some sort of triumphant epic? At the end of it, even though you're going through lots of difficulties, your marriage is going to succeed and you're going to be this wonder couple because you triumphed over all these difficult circumstances. So in every aspect of your life, whether it be your career, as a parent, you're in some sort of movie. And again, movies are what make up our stories inside ourselves. And I realized about a year ago that I was in some sort of a nightmare, like a horror movie. And before that, I had no idea, because this is one of the problems when you're in a relationship. There are lots of times where you can have hope and you can see a positive outcome. And that's what I saw. I saw plenty of times where I said, this could end really well, or this could have a good ending, like a good positive ending to the story. And so until the story fully plays out, this is one of the problems that we experience in life, And I find that I think of it as like God tricking me or tricking somebody into going on a certain path because we're given information and we're led to believe, maybe by our own souls, our own egos, that there's something good for us if we follow this path. And so we embark on a relationship or a career, or we move somewhere and we think, oh, this is for this reason and it's going to be great. And then as things unfold, the greatness disappears and you realize, yeah, that was never going to happen. The good things disappear and then you're in a struggle and you're in this difficult circumstance. But in the end, it was worth it because these difficult circumstances, these tests, made you into a better person. Again, more loving person, getting you closer to God. And so if you look at saints, all the saints, and I don't mean just Christian saints in various religions from around the world, and you look at these spiritual texts or other heroes that were in stories, especially the old stories, but even in modern day movies, the conflict and the things that they overcome, the things that they succeed over, their traumas, their difficulties, turn them into these great people. And so that's something that you have to experience in your life, that you have to go through things and how you handle those challenges. And those are the things you're going to remember. Those are the things that are going to pull out of you. You have to perform at a higher level, pulling out of you spiritual energies, just digging in deep because you have something really big to overcome. It's just like anything. If you're lifting weights, the more the resistance, the better the outcome of your body physically. And so we have resistance, we have difficulties, but those are what make or break our lives. And that's what we need to understand, that we have personality flaws. We have things that we need to work out within a relationship. So if we're grateful for the difficulties and we appreciate the other person for those things as well, then there is a chance that the marriage can end up working out. Because this is the idea of a soul plan where you have a few people, in this idea of twin flames or a soulmate, you have a number of people that you have a deep soul connection with, and that you can have a long-lasting and mutually rewarding relationship. But it's really getting in touch with what your souls agreed to between each other and how that can play out to be beneficial to both of you. And really, we're left flying blind with this. So as our lives unfold, we have to take the right attitude that this is what was best for me, that I'm benefiting from this situation. And if the other person, your spouse, recognize that as well, that this is really a gift, that we had this contract to have this mutually beneficial spiritual situation, and both people are open to this, and with gratitude, they can overcome the difficulties, and then there can be a period of bliss and harmony without so much stress and trauma. And this is something I think that everybody should aspire to work towards, throwing away this idea of happily ever after and realizing that, well, no matter what, it's difficult. When you get married and you have kids, you have to expand as a human being because you've been trained to be someone who's self-oriented, after personal pleasures and ego gratification and satisfaction. And now you have to serve other people, and you have to expand your capacities in terms of your feelings, your emotions, being more compassionate, being wiser, being more understanding, and going through the stress of, children getting sick and your spouse and difficulties that you have, trauma and financial issues and all these things that come with every relationship, and realizing that they're for your own good and it's part of a plan. Again, getting back to this idea, it's part of a plan, because difficulties are something that always bring people closer to God if they take them with gratitude and they realize that they're there to benefit you in the long run. So this is something, again, I hope everyone aspires to. This is Paul Romano reporting from the Apocalypse, and everybody have a wonderful afternoon.